So thank you, Krantitai, for its story session. So it's time for our guest speaker talk. Um, okay. Okay. So our today's guest speaker is Dr. Govind Daske. Uh, about him, he has an MA in medical in psychiatric and social work from TIS of Mumbai. He has done PhD from Indiana University, USA, and his topic is Jata, like matted hair, removal movement, decoding the cultural politics of hair from disorder to dignity. Let me give him small introduction. So, as an activist scholar and expert in the cultural practice surrounding hair matting in India, he have extensive knowledge on the symbolism-based stigma, discrimination, and sexuality surrounding hair. With over 15 years of experience in human development, he have contributed to research, execution, management, impact analysis, strategic advocacy, and corporate social responsibility in the field of gender, health, and social and economic justice. In addition to his research expertise, he is skilled in mentoring and training first generation students from historically marginalized backgrounds. He worked to promote ethical community scholars and leaders and advance the anti-caste and anti-racist ideals in social work. Many of the students he has trained have received scholarships such as the Chevening and gone on to study at prestigious universities in Europe and North America. He have also provided he have also provided expert advice on research and design and qualitative methods for non-profit and CSR initiatives in India and have a strong commitment to professional excellence in my contributions. Throughout his career in the non-profit sector, academia, and a freelancer, he have published numerous peer-reviewed papers, book chapters, and books in the field of social work, public health, sociology, political theory, and cultural anthropology. So with this, I welcome Dr. Govind Daske. Welcome on Anna's Online Vihara, sir. Um, Before allow you to speak, let me give some brief idea about this session. So, sir, you have around 20 to 30 minutes to talk to cover your topic. Most preferable language is English, but if you are not comfortable, we are okay with Hindi and then Marathi. When you're talking, most like we will on the mute, so don't think that we are not here, but we don't want to disturb you so that you can talk without any disturbance. And once your talk finish, we will take the question from members. So, do you have any questions like before we start, sir?
Not at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So now floor is yours. You can start. I'm going on mute. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, Jai Bhim, everyone. Thank you for having me, Anna, for this lecture today on this lovely Sunday. I'm going to share my presentation and then I will be speaking. Okay.
Sure. Are you able to see any share button at the bottom?
I
Or
think I am able to share. Are you able to
yeah,
see this?
I can start. Yeah, go. Yeah, I think yeah,
It's in
we can
full
start.
view. It's in full view.
You can press F5 and then we can see it full. Yeah, I can see that PPT is there. Yeah. You want to press F5 and then we can see it.
Okay. Is it visible now? Full?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You're
So,
able to see.
my topic today is matted hair removal movement, decoding the cultural politics of hair from disorder to dignity. The pronunciation is Jata, basically. Jata, Jade, Jate. There are like three, four different pronunciations that are being, used for denoting matted hair, particularly in the southwestern parts of India, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and Maharashtra, particularly southwestern Maharashtra. So, you will come to know what is Jata as soon as we go forward in this particular presentation. You are familiar with matted hair of yogis, sadhus, ascetics, as well as Rastafarian hair. You are probably familiar with, and the most popular one is Medusa's hair, which you often come across in the stories or most of the philosophical literature as well. This is most analyzed kind of matted hair in the Western context, particularly European context, so to say. And apart from that matted hair, do also exist in an African context where it's called Dada, that's DADA. Matted hair or dreadlocks have been existing like across the globe in different cultures with different names and different mythological as well as social cultural significance. Now, the matter here I'm referring today in this particular presentation are different. These are the matter here I'm talking about. These are various forms, and these are not quite the dreadlocks like the genetic hair. These are also not a hairstyle like particularly twists or curls made using matted kind of like a hairstyle just for the beautification or something of that sort. So this particularly is somehow like it's rooted in some of the health conditions as well. So these are the hair I'm talking about. These are the matted hair I'll be referring throughout the presentation today. So there are a variety of descriptions in the literature, health as well as cultural as well as sociological literature that explains what is matted hair. So there are a variety of medical descriptions. I won't go into the details of the medical descriptions, but predominantly just to take a very brief hint of what it is precisely the entangled hair, which are like irreversibly entangled, and those small nuggets when they are formed, they become like twisted, and then the agglomeration keeps on becoming stiff, and then it becomes like the whole bucket of hair. So there are a variety of ways this matted hair could grow in different people based on their different physiological as well as psychological realities. So these are the matted hair I'm precisely referring to. Now the whole context of matted hair comes in a picture from Devdasi tradition, which has been banned like legally since many decades now. So what used to happen in the Devdasi tradition, that whenever there is a small form of like matting emerged on younger females, they it was seen as a like sign of arrival of the goddess, or there was a deification of those matted locks of a hair, and then those young girls were dedicated in the Devdasi tradition. Now Devdasi tradition, as you know, when it got banned, it was pretty much known for the temple based prostitution, and there was also human trafficking that was found by the the crime bureau. So most of these women used to get dedicated, and then they used to end up in the urban brothels of India. So there was substantial population, and there's a nice documentary by Vice also online. You can check about that particular phenomenon, the human trafficking part of it. So historically, Devdasi tradition has been like known for it, the exploitation of women. Now the caste dimension comes in a picture where almost 90% of the Devdasi dedication used to take place due to matted hair, and majority of the women who used to get dedicated were coming from the historically marginalized and untouchable castes. So this particular the whole Devdasi clan was full of women coming from oppressed caste basically, and the whole prostitution was the dominant exploitative phenomena where the villagers as well as the temple priest used to sexually exploit these women who were bound to the temples as a Devadasis. Now, you might be wondering, like, the Devdasi tradition is banned, then why we are still talking about matted hair? So, although the Devdasi tradition was banned, we still have that belief system attached to matted hair still existing among the social psyche of the, all the people, carry that kind of a belief. So, that belief system still exists, and there are several women who do suffer because even in the earlier form, the medical part of it was not really understood. Like whenever there was emergence of matted hair, it was attributed to the goddess, so there was not particularly any medical part, medical consultation involved in majority of the cases. So we know this as a cultural phenomena, but we haven't really explored what is the reason, like what is the health related etiopathogenesis, so to say, behind formation of matted hair. So historically, we have not been aware of this particular thing in the medical realms to that extent, but there have been reports which I will be explaining. Uh, so this
Uh,
is
1 minute, Govind sir. Sorry, sir. Is it possible for you to press F5 button and make that like a presentation? Like, is it? Can you
is it still
press
not fully
F5
visible?
button? It's fully visible, but we can see it's like next slide and other options all on the screen. That's not a big deal, but just a
Okay.
request come in the chat. So I'm just checking. Can you press
Yeah,
F5
yeah.
button?
I just
Yeah, then
I usually struggle with this setting. I'm so sorry about that.
okay, no, no worries. If that's a problem, that's still okay. We are able to see a screen. So no problem. If you're not, that's fine. We can continue. Thank
Mm,
you. Like at the
uh,
bottom, you can see certain screen like zoom, and then can you see at the bottom pane
no, I did
sign,
click
and then
the F5 part actually. I did click the F5 part, and that's when I got this particular thing. So
okay, okay, no problem. That is not a showstopper. I just want to say, but that's fine. At least we are able, but we are able to see a screen, so that's no problem.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
do one
You
thing.
can
Like
continue, sir.
I'll stop share and I'll reshare again, and I'll see if it works.
Okay, if that can help, that's fine. Yeah.
I'm sorry about this.
No, no, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I know there's so many things, sharing and other stuff, so I can understand. If you want, just press F5 and then start sharing screen. Because when you share, it asks which screen do you want to share.
Yes, yes. There is something.
If not, no worries. With the previous time setup, is still okay. We are fine with that. I thought just check it out like it's on. Yeah, we are able to. I think you start sharing. The screen is not here, but yeah. Yeah, and now can you press F5, I believe? If you run F5 or run the show, like run button, is there anything like?
Slideshow, right?
Yeah.
What do you see now?
Yeah, that's better. That was better. Yeah, the whole screen is now with that one. Yeah, sure.
It's
So
visible
you can
now?
yes, it's visible
Okay.
and it's full screen now. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for being patient.
That's
So,
right. Yes.
so now since the Devdasi dedication is out of question because of the legal ban, how does this particular cultural part, that affects women, and how matting of hair still exists as sort of like a sub-ritualistic belief in the current society. So historically, as I explained, like when a woman used to develop or a young female used to develop matted hair, it was, I'm sorry, it was it was attributed to the clan deity or the goddesses, basically. Yellama has been the known goddess for most of the hair attribution, like matted hair attribution. And there are like three temples of Yellama that exist in on the border districts of Maharashtra and Karnataka. So, so the young woman, whenever she herself would find that there is an emergence of matted hair, or one of the family members realizes that there is a matted hair, it used to get attributed to the deity or the goddess, and then they were immediately banned from, combing the hair as well as removing that matted portion. Alongside, medical consultation was banned, going to barber was banned. I'm so sorry. Then they used to, get worshipped, like, with all this, turmeric and all that. And that used to aggravate the condition. Gradually, it used to, form the larger mass. And now, during the Devdasi tradition, it was there was a dedication actually, which was the most brutal tradition as far as we know. But currently now there are several women who develop matted hair regardless of their marital status. Okay, earlier the phenomena was largely associated with the unmarried females, young females, but now even a woman of a 40 can develop matted hair, and in the same region, this particular Can I get some water, please? So now, when it comes to the contemporary period, as we see, most of these women are still under the particular burden of the belief system that was pre-existing with the Devdasi culture. Now, whenever women currently develop matted hair, that it still gets attributed to the clan deity or the Yalama goddess. Then they have to follow different kind of rituals. Now they have to go to this jatra, they have to do rituals, there is a fasting, then there is lot of uh, a lot of restrictions on their day-to-day routine, like they can't attend some of the marriages, some of the functions. They also cannot eat certain things. So there is something called Jogva also. It's very pretty cultural kind of a thing which exists actually across, and there could be some spiritual meaning attached to it. But the way it gets, used in this particular tradition currently, it becomes little coercive, for some of the women, because I have seen like some of the most women who are like educated, even office goer women developing this, and they have to be they were like sort of like engaged in the ritualistic practices which were not really taken in a good way by them, and I mean, I'm just trying to explain the phenomena first. I'm not really any passing any like judgment of my even theoretical research to that extent here. So what used to happen, like once the woman develops the matted hair, they had to keep it throughout actually. Now there was emergence of like Jata removal movement, okay, long back in 80s. And during that period, many women sort of like, convinced, to remove the Jata and then live normal life. So Devdasi Punarvivaha, that is the remarrying of Devdasis, started taking place. Jata removal movement became very active, and then particularly in the Gadhinglas block of Kolhapur district, this movement was at the peak. So Dr. Koppal, Dr. Vaskar, Mr. and Mrs. Vaskar, they were the prominent people from the Maharashtra side who were like at the forefront of Jata removal movement. Then there was Professor Banne, and then there was Professor Rajan Gawas was also involved in the awareness part, as you must be knowing. His name is very known for his literary work. But the core part was Gaurabai Salvade. Gaurabai was the former Devdasi who led this campaign. And then majority of these activists, some associated with ANISA, Andhashraddha Nirmoolan Samiti, they were associated with these Jata removals. So this is how the movement started. So until the point like when women were banned from going to doctor and were forced, to follow the ritual, it was very coercive. But then, with the emergence of Jata removal alongside the ban on the Devdasi tradition, things started improving. But nevertheless, like still, we are having several women who face this particular problem, and the Jata removal movement is also functional, still functional actually. So you can see like the on the right side, there's activist from Anissa, and on the left side is Dr. Sudhir Kumar and his team actually. So I am affiliated to Dr. Sudhir Kumar's group, which is active in the parts of like southwestern Maharashtra. So this is more or less the journey of Jata affected woman currently. Now, here have been like women's hair have been the target of religious-based traditions right from the beginning, and historically there is a literature which talks a lot about how women should keep their hair, how hair should be maintained, and what is the meaning of like good hair, bad hair. Then there is a lot of sexuality-related messages attached to women's hair as well. The control of hair or head particularly exists in two dominant traditions. Like one is the Devdasi tradition, now the sub-ritual of Devdasi, which is the matting of hair, which predominantly exists among the Dalit and Bahujan communities or marginalized communities, so to say. And the other tradition which used to exist was a tonsure of a widow's head. This particularly existed in the so-called upper caste communities, where widow's head was like, shaved, and that was like a marker, that helped male to identify this woman as a widow. Mahatma Phule did a lot of work on, reforms on this particular practice as well. Um, uh, Earlier, when he was active reformist alongside the school reforms, he also had one house created in Pune for these deserted women because of their widowhood, and most of them were also pregnant from immoral relationships, particularly victimized by their own community members. So the whole angle, the religious-based tradition angle and the whole gender victimization as well as the gender caste intersectionality exist, particularly in relation with women's hair in this particular manner. So the matting of hair now is associated with the two hair-related disorders like plica neuropathica and plica polonica. So the plica neuropathica name is given to it primarily because there were some neuropathic symptoms observed among the women who developed matted hair in the early part, actually. Okay, I'm referring to 1890. Okay. Now, the Plica Polonica name also comes from, I mean, there is a history associated with Poland with the word Plica Polonica. Now, Polish laborers particularly were used to, migrate from they used to migrate from Poland to different parts of Europe, and they used to have particularly their hair wrapped under, a cloth. And most of those laborers actually they used to develop these matted hair. It was called Polish plaits. So on the basis of that particular existence, it is named as Plica Polonica. So Plica polonica and Plica neuropathica, these are the two names that are associated with hair matting historically. Now, 1882, actually, Lee Page is the first doctor. I mean, this is medical report. I'm pretty sure like this particular phenomena existed across in different cultural realms, but as the medical science came in the action and the medical reporting came in the action, we have some of the records which I'm trying to present here to give you a brief idea about how uh, medical science has dealt with this particular problem. Okay, so 1882 Lee Page identified the first case of plica neuropathica in a young girl in UK. So that is the first like reported incident I came across. Now, next year in Mumbai, one of the Koli community women had matted hair, and Dr. Pestanji was a Parsi doctor who reported about this particular existence. It was also like associated with the goddess. I mean, the family of the affected female believed association of the deity. Now there is a huge gap actually, almost like 100 years gap, because World War First, World War Second, there was not much activity happening in the Europe as well, and the medical science was also parallelly developing with a in a slow manner because of the wars globally, and most of the world was like also colonized as well alongside. So, so 1982 again, there was a report from India by Hajini and his team about matted hair. Now there are a variety of reports still going on. Like you can see, there is one reported one report about like matting of hair, plica neuropathica. The doctor specifically mentioned plica neuropathica, and there was a mental health condition. So again, like 2024, like there's one case from Egypt that is being reported. So you can see like the scale is not really that big, but the problem pretty much exists across the globe, and it gets reported through these rare sort of like medical cases. So overall, like if I have to summarize the whole phenomena of matting of hair in one slide, then this is particularly the slide. I mean, if I have to brief it, there are a variety of beliefs like matted hair in our cultures. We have this, we have it like called as divine call. Sometimes it is being called evil. In Europe, there are some communities which believe that it is a sort of a prophylaxis from a disease. Like when there is some sort of like, deadly disease comes in the body, there is some divine intervention and that transforms the disease into matting of matted hair and the person survives, those sort of beliefs. Like that's where it is called prophylaxis. Then there are a variety of practices associated. As I mentioned, like there are different rituals women have to follow. Then for the removal across the globe, there is a very interesting commonality across the world that removing or cutting jata leads to some sort of evil or some sort of like a curse to the family of the person or the person or herself or himself. So that exists across the globe. And there is also belief that it is a protective force among the people who get affected by matted hair. As I mentioned, like there are a variety of physical health, mental health implications. I explained about social isolation as well, like not participating in marriage and all that. The physical health implications are very very grave as the jeta grows, the weight becomes like little tougher to handle, the small necks, neck pain is there, back pain is there, then problems with the sleeping because the posture cannot be maintained, like the resting posture cannot be maintained by the women during the sleep. So that affects, it leads to insomnia. And then the body gets weakened, the nutritional loss is also there because of the fasting as well as some of the other dietary restrictions. uh, Overall, then there is also when this hair are not like washed continuously, or they're not allowed to wash. Actually, there is a ritual washing on certain days, and there is a worship also of a hair. So if there is some infection in the on the scalp or something, it gets deteriorated very fast, and that also, like there is itching, there is a foul smell coming. That also leads to a little sort of like a aversion to foods and all that because of that consistent itching and smell. So it's very difficult to carry matted hair in this particular manner. Now, the restriction on the health access that leads to human rights violation, considering health as a human right. Now, the economic participation also gets affected. I mean, if you see some of the stories of Devdasis about how they were restricted from participation in all the other activities, it's terrible. I mean, the whole livelihood was so complex, and they had to end up in the brothel or doing sex work for survival. Now, etiological explanation was like the health was medical science was there have been like earlier part they connected it with the neuropathic element. Uh, Historically, most of the matted hair women have been having some sort of mental health related issues alongside their physical condition of matting of hair. But this is just like observation I'm trying to put it. You have to go to the medical science for the actual scientific reporting. Okay, but this is one of the most under-researched kind of disease. Earlier, they associated it with neuropathic force. Then later in 1960s onwards, they associated more into the physical condition. They called it like felted hair or tangled hair. So the earlier explanation as a neuropathic literally got vanished. But later the physiological picture came in the action actually. So felted hair, bird's nest hair, these are the names you find in medical reports. Some people give reasoning like the body fluids, develop these kind of matting. There is some amount of attribution to psychological distress as well. There is a larger belief which also exists in India that hair care and hygiene, when there is a lack of it, it leads to matting of hair. But there have been examples where people remained without any sort of hair care or washing hair and they still couldn't develop. Almost like a year they kept it like that and they did not really develop any matted hair. Like some of the activists used to report this to me during my study. I haven't really seen anyone doing it in person, but people used to say like, even if one loses the hair care, it still doesn't necessarily lead to matting of hair. So it definitely shows the uniqueness of matting of hair. Like there is some sort of condition that still needs to be fully investigated as to like what is the etiopathogenesis behind matting of hair. So medically, it is not really researched adequately. So that is the core observation, and the comorbidity, the mental health morbidity is one of the things that is pretty much there all the time. Now, treatment option wise, there is of course some medical treatment where mostly they chop or shave, the matted part. The religious, of course, you have to go to the temple, follow the rituals, pay the fees to the priestly bodies, and then these older devadasis lead, and they cut it. Some of the pujaris, the priests also do cut it with the rituals and all that. The activist led intervention, which I also am affiliated to, I explained like the Jata removal movement is predominantly a volitional kind of a movement where most of these volunteers come forward and help the Jata affected woman to untangle the matted hair. There are a variety of non-profits involved because of the government action, particularly in the Karnataka. Several non-profits came into the picture for the rehabilitation of Devdasis, and they also provided some sort of assistance for removal of matted hair. Still, like if you go to Saundati, there is a temple and there is a this government assisted sort of like barber shops there, which help for removal of the removal of the matted hair. Sometimes women do without even sharing, they do cut the hair, but sometimes it re-emerges also based on the condition. So I have came across some of the reports where women try to cut it without telling it to their family members. But again, in a week or so, there was a re-emergence of matted hair. Sometimes families also take initiative and do try to cut it, but sometimes it re-emerges again. So that particular medical aspect is pretty much in action, and that affects this whole treatment part. Now, the topic I have mentioned about Jata removal movement. So I'll be primarily dedicating the next part of the presentation for explaining the whole dynamics associated with the caste and caste intersectionality and how that gets shaped in the models for Jata removal, like the different facets of Jata removal movement. So there are like two dominant interventions that exist for Jata removal. Currently, the the group I'm affiliated to is Dr. Sudhir Kumbar's group. We value women's spirituality, and we untangle the matted hair. Like we use blades for untangling the matted hair. So untangling is our core intervention, and the rationalist interventions primarily by Anisa and other groups motivated by their particular philosophy. They use predominantly biomedical informed approach where they usually cut those matted portions. Now, why this matters, I'm going to explain right away. Most of these women maintain the matted hair for like years, and they do believe that this is arrival of a goddess, because they live in this dual sort of like a drudgery where they do get the divine status because the matted hair is affiliated to goddess, and it's like arrival of a goddess in a human. So they do have some sort of like religious signification, and they do get some value as sort of like religiously ascribed sort of like an entity. So women do develop some sort of identification with the jata, some sort of relationship with the jata, and the regular rituals are like sanskaras they do on themselves. So they do have one sort of like a relationship. I don't know, I want to call it like intimate relationship per se, but the whole embodiment of goddess definitely exists, and they do name it properly, and they do share the sort of like emotional association they have with jata, and then cutting jata is like parting the goddess from themselves in one shot actually. So they do not let people use scissors actually, most of these women, and if you use scissor it will lead to some sort of like a bad outcome or some bad omen to the family and the affected person. That's what they believe. So we do value these beliefs, and we don't really force these women to cut their jata. We slowly approach them, we convince them how it is necessary, we show them the photographs of the previous women who have undergone jata removal, and then we untangle it. So we don't carry any scissors. So the women, affected woman remains like comfortable with the activists who are going to undergo like perform the jata removal. So this is the primary difference. But Anissa does use scissors actually, and in the articles they publish actually they do mention about cutting the hair. So sometimes like it's sort of like a trauma, when cutting the hair. So we do believe, like I'm not criticizing Anissa per se here. I'm just establishing the line of action and the whole ethical foundation and why it is there. How we rationalize our approach. So the whole, respecting the sacred embodiment is pretty much necessary. So we mobilize the family members, we invite the community members so that once the jata is removed, there is a proper social assimilation of the woman. Because the moment somebody comes and, again, sort of like scolds the woman or scares the woman for removing jata, then again it collapses and the whole mental health gets disturbed. So there is a lot of dynamics involved even with the jata removal. So earlier, we have to consult a lot. We have to do sort of like mental preparedness of the family as well as the affected woman. Now, on the day of removal, we do like allow all the rituals to take place. Actually, rituals in terms of like sometimes women want to do some rituals. There is some sort of like a gathering also. Sometimes there is some sort of like uh, bath or puja, those things do happen actually, and we do let that happen because that's how women become more comfortable, and the whole untangling of the matted hair, which is like releasing the goddess from that particular body with in a respectful manner, spiritually respectful manner, that has to take place. So we have came across like some of the women whose jata were like cut, and then they felt like they experienced some of the mental health issues afterwards because they cut the jata and the whole belief system was like torturing themselves actually. So these kind of dynamics are there. So the whole respect to the sort of spiritual association or the spiritual intimate belief that women develop with the jata needs to be respected. But the moment there is like a cutting of jata happens, there is like a sort of like a coercive sort of coercive sort of like a experience that women have to undergo. So earlier there was not much research done on it actually. Like when in 2009, earlier I was associated with this as a young sort of like a student initially in Karad, which is place in Satara. As a student, I was associated with it, and gradually I joined TISS. And after TISS, I took up one research actually. So that was the first case study documentation we did to document the experiences of Jata affected women. So the Jata removal was pretty much captured, and we wanted to disseminate it. So we wrote a book in English actually. That was the early part in 2009 I'm talking about. And then in 2011, I took up again this particular topic for my dissertation because although we documented the whole part, like the experiences, it was still being viewed as sort of like a cultural phenomena or subcultural practice. So we wanted to highlight the medical part of it, like the health and mental health drudgery, to bring in a picture. So we wanted to document the phenomenological understanding. Now, these are the qualitative research methods. There are different nuances to method. Earlier, we did a case study, which was pretty much exploratory case study. So we documented the experiences as well as the different incidents. And it was predominantly like there were multiple reports, not just the reports of the women, but the reports of the family as well as other community members and other activists as well. So we built the case studies on the basis of that. So during my dissertation, I particularly used this method called phenomenology, Heideggerian hermeneutic phenomenology, where I documented their lived experience, and their lived experiences were the narratives as to like how they experienced matted hair right in the beginning, right from the emergence until the removal. The journey was particularly documented in their own words, and I could highlight, some of the health related problems they shared, because women usually do not share health related problems associated with Jata, because Jata is a very divine phenomena for them. And the whole belief system is also very stringent in terms of like maintaining this particular interpretation of Jata, the cultural interpretation of Jata as a divine phenomena. So most of the women do not report it but during the narrative they do explain, like, how they lived, because it's a lived experience they are sharing in the narrative. So that helped us to, argue like there is a health and mental health consequences of matted hair, and there's also comorbidity of health and mental health, sort of like a comorbidity within the Jata affected women. So that sort of like helped us to scale up the intervention actually. Now, gradually, we also involved like a large sort of like a process of informed consent where we informed women. Then we tried also to involve some of the medical professionals from the,
Loans.
sorry, medical professionals from different localities to, get associated with this. Uh, so here the whole aesthetic, the spiritual aesthetics that women develop with matted hair, it is seen as a crown. Some of the women do have like a very strong belief that it's the goddess. So they do feel themselves like they are the goddess, and there is a belief system also about it. But somehow they have to live with this duality where currently now women develop matted hair. It also gets associated with this sexual exploitation that existed during Devdas's time. So there is a sexual symbolism attached to matted hair that also leads to stigma among the women's. Like currently women do face that. So during our intervention we do have to offer counseling on those fronts as well, and we have to educate the family as well as the affected women. So these are all like this is like theoretical part, and I have mentioned it. I do believe that we can discuss it in more detail during the discussion session rather than getting into these theoretical nuances, which will be more complicated. Actually, I don't want to stretch it to that level. I believe in dialectical method, and it does help us. So basically, cutting jata is a traumatic experience because of the spiritual association women develop over the period of time. So we have developed this method of untangling, and we do believe that this method is more humanistic, more valuing the belief systems, and more than that, our argument is that at some point these cultural practices could have been more dignified. I mean, not the odd part of it, like having women believing there is like a deity arrived in them. Matted hair could have been a hairstyle earlier, like it exists across nowadays in the postmodern world. So what happened to that, and what was the earlier like indigeneity associated with these particular practices, which later got a bad sort of like a element in it or bad practices in it, like the temple-based prostitution and all that. Because the earlier report was like temple-based dancers, with the Devdasis also. Then there is also some sort of like informal mythological stories that emerge, which mention that there used to be a clan of yoginis who had matted hair and who did believe like they had some like tantric beliefs, and they had this freedom about their sexuality, like they had the claim on their body, like women's body was the solely owned by women, and women used to take the decision, like whom to get procreation with, whom to have association with, marriage, or any other relationships. Okay, so the whole morality was centered around women, and women were the largely the normative force which used to determine what happens with their bodies. So that volition is pretty much coded in this particular tradition also. Like when I was interviewing some of the women whose like matted hair were removed, there are like two, three women who did mention this in a very sort of like a literary manner about like how when the goddess arrives in them with through matted hair, how their bodies become divine, and whatever the divine wishes the women can do. So whatever the women who has jata says, it's like a divine word. So people also like run away from these women, because if they curse, people believe that it becomes true. So those belief systems are pretty much there, and we really have to do some sort of like a serious spiritual investigation or spirituality related research about these traditions and the indigeneity associated with these traditions. we're still not there. We are still like through social work interventions, we are trying to deal with more humanistic, culturally sensitive sort of intervention. We are still there actually. We haven't done core research on the spiritual part, so I can't really talk about that to that extent. But I still want to give some sort of hints that I came across during my study. So when I say like the cultural politics of disorder and dignity, I want to highlight some of these parts actually, like how uh, the jata of marginalized women are seen as, a dirt or like something dirty thing, and then it is like being cut with a sort of like medical sort of interventions as if like a surgical cut or something. So these sort of like aesthetic norms or the cleanliness norms associating with this particular disorder, we do believe that there is a sense of sort of cultural intersectionality associated with jata, and majority of the so-called upper caste dominated theorizations or the narratives about jata do tag this as some dirt or something of that sort that needs to be removed and cleaned and all that. Okay, so we don't belong to that particular thought process. We are more value based, and we do respect the Dalit Bahujan women's spirituality, and we do believe that that needs to be respected. At the same time, women's health and human rights need to be restored as well. So we don't really want them to stay in that drudgery because they have this spiritual belief, but it needs to be done in a more culturally sensitive manner, respecting their belief system. So that's predominantly my core argument with respect to this particular presentation. Thank you so much for being with me and listening to this carefully. So these are the references we generally show in academia. So I thought I should just show it here as well. And now I'm open for discussion. Any questions or comments, I would welcome. And thank you again, Anna, for giving me this opportunity to share about this particular scholarship that I have been pursuing. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Daske. This was a very good topic, and we really thank for your all research, hard work you are doing on it, and working on the ground root to, making people aware about this Jata issue. And there is multiple I can see, like religious and then medical issues and all. So it's working, especially when you're working those type of women who are not that much educated. So making them aware also is like a big challenge. So I can understand. So thanks for all your work. I will really appreciate. With this, I will open the floor for questions. So remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question. If you not able to ask question or unmute yourself, you can type also. I can read the question for you. So yeah, I can see first hand raised by Mr. Nitin Dakutore. Can you please unmute yourself and ask question? So please go ahead. Mr. Nitin Dakutore, please unmute yourself or yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think you unmute yourself, but again you press mute. Let me unmute you. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm on
No,
mobile,
sir.
so therefore it was
I
little
can understand. Yeah,
time.
go ahead. No problem.
Yes, Devhim and Dr. Govind, it's wonderful presentations. It has been kind of your more than 15 years of research and academic kind of rigorously investment that you're bringing out. However, coming on critical aspect, and you may kind of come up with your articulation on that aspect too, because there are quite a few things, but I don't want to go too much in that detail. But taking your last concluding remark with dignified cultural practices of Dalit Bahujan women, uh, if we do not deconstruct these so-called traditional practices, and if we try to reconceptualize with dignity of such culture, then there is certainly a problem with that. Then why we should not kind of reconstruct the idea of putras, the idea of tamasha, the idea of devdasi, the idea of maharki, eskarki, and so on, because those are cultural as well as the occupational kind of aspects, and both has kind of lived sources or livelihood sources. So I don't know how you think about, but as far as my understanding and as far as the reading of Dr. Ambedkar and contemporary Dalit Bahujan scholars, this is a little difficult to kind of take this line what you're talking about, because this sounds very soft Hindutva philosophy that, and this is what is happening with subclassification. If you read the work or see the work of various people, including these cultural people like Chandan Kamble, then there are quite a few people who are talking about this Edai, Mariai, and so on with their songs and so on. Now, it is very contradictory with the vision of Dr. Ambedkar. Since you mentioned Dalit Bhojan, therefore I'm putting this perspective. How you see these contradictions? How you see this, where it is heading, what you're talking about, dignified cultural practices of those women. And it really sounds with very soft Hindutva philosophy.
Okay. Now, I don't really know what is soft Hindutva, because it's Hindutva. That's what I do believe. If it is Hindutva, it's Hindutva. There is nothing like soft Hindutva or something of that sort in the first place. Okay, so coming back to your question, what I mentioned, like probably there is some sort of like interpretive differences here, not really the conceptual footing that differs from what you believe or what Ambedkar's vision was. Okay. I mean, that's like my assertion here, not really the conviction that I offered yet. I'm going to offer the conviction now. So the thing is that when I say cultural, sort of like respect to cultural dignity, all those words that I have used, it's primarily rooted in the kind of experiences these women go through when they have gone through the other biomedically informed intervention. Okay, so there is a sort of like interventional experience that we have been having that has led us to, put it like that. Okay, so it's primarily coming from the interventional aspect, the social work interventional aspect, from where I'm talking in that particular fashion. So what I do believe in is that exploration of the indigeneity associated with these particular traditions as well, which has not been touched upon. Actually, predominantly what happens, like, we don't go back in search of indigeneity, even with the uh, uh, issue of casteism or issue of other rituals or other practices. Actually, we do not really have that kind of a core anthropological, dedicated sort of research done on these things. Even the feminist movement hasn't really picked on these things that we have been doing. Actually, there's not much research done by the feminist facets in India as well, dedicated research on these particular things. So there is not really sort of like a difference between what you are trying to highlight and what we do. We are not really going there. In fact, we have been trying to sort of like make it more humanistic and more culturally sensitive when we are approaching this particular problem. And of course, like all these rituals, they have taken a very bad shape. There is a whole cultural evolution that takes place. None of the rituals remain in the same form when it started. Actually, generational changes happen. There are different forces that shape these things in a different manner. I mean, what has happened with the stupas and other things, with the kind of reshaping that has taken place afterwards. Even in the Buddhist spiritual philosophy, there have been different dynamics. Actually, the way it got moved away from the original Buddhist literature. Those nuances are pretty much there. So that same thing happens with these rituals. Actually, now, there could be some sort of like a good ritual, good spirituality that existed with some part of it, and then gradually it must have got deteriorated. Now, it is still a theoretical interpretation I'm offering here, but there needs to be investigation. That is my core point here. Okay, so we have to understand, like, when these rituals had some meaning. I'm not talking about the sexual exploitation of Devdasi. We do know that this has been the exploitative phenomena that has taken place later, and the whole brothel related issues that taken place, the whole human trafficking part that has become like deteriorated. And there is element of caste intersectionality and the caste-based discrimination here through which these rituals have gone totally into a different realm altogether, and it become, I'm sorry, so away from, like, a clear violation of human rights. So redefining Potaraj, of course, we have to do it. Redefining all the other traditions as well, it's necessary. It's necessary, but we have to understand the indigeneity of it, actually.
Okay,
That's what
okay.
I'm
So,
insisting
Govind,
on.
I understood what you're trying to say. Do you mean that the cultural practices need to be with dignity, should be preserved? Human trafficking is something is definitely a problematic, but the cultural practices, and when you say culture, I take through the Bourdieu or Very's work or Dr. Ambedkar's work. When we see the culture has its own practices, beliefs, and norms. So, do you mean that Devdasi practice, as in a culture, quote unquote, should be treated with dignity? That's what you mean?
No, what I mean to say that we have to investigate, like, what was the original form associated with Devdasi. Devdasi is a deteriorated form. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like, it has evolved into a very sort of like negative practice. So that is why I'm frequently using the word indigeneity. Like, we have to explore what was it originally. What was it originally that has got
Okay.
deteriorated and that has taken this kind of shape.
Okay, so
So
historically, let me try to understand, because what I
yeah,
understood is
yeah,
different. Therefore, I'm asking this question. No counter questions, but to understand, build my own understanding, I'm asking
sure,
you. So
sure.
you mean that when the Devdasi was invented, was different, and what it has taken today is different. That's an ugly form. That's what you mean. And for that reason, the indigenization of the Devdasi system or practices should be preserved or should be treated with the dignity. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is what you mean.
I think the way I'm mentioning indigeneity and the way you are mentioning indigenization is, there are two different things actually. Indigeneity, I mean to say, the original form, sort of like a primordial existence of these practices, because these practices associated with certain communities and they still found to be associated with certain communities. So with the caste discrimination, these marginalized folks likely would have been, forced to do certain rituals and exploited gradually. And there is enough evidence about Devdasi tradition, like how it became sort of like a sexual exploitation of the women from marginalized communities. Okay, so there is adequate evidence about like how this has got deteriorated historically, Devdasi tradition. My point is, like, go to indigeneity. That means, like, these communities, even the pre-casteism era, there could have been the prosperous pre-existing like indigenous community that had some sort of ritual that has taken shape in this
Okay,
form, actually, gradually,
you're
with the
speaking
casteism
you're
and what
speaking
are other
with may and might.
sociological. Hmm?
Yeah, you're speaking with may and might that there might be or there could have been such kind of practices before the caste system. That's
Yeah,
what
so
you're saying.
what was the original form actually where the spirituality
So
is
as far as
rooted in?
because see, I also do read all these things, and therefore I was asking and trying to kind of correct myself if I was wrong. But let me tell you that these are the caste-based cultural practices invented with the caste. There is no literature on this that talks about that before the caste, such practices were there. These are based on the caste, and they were the slaves. These were the cultural slaves. I understand you have kind of done PhD and all these things, but as far as I read, there is nothing. If you read the Buddhist scriptures before that, you will not find such kind of things. And these are in pockets in India. There are different places. However, but there is some certain contradictions, and I hope, I mean, like, you will reflect on that when you revisit your work. But as I said, that it really sounds with soft Hindutva, and soft Hindutva is something that radicalizing the culture, and one is that preserving the culture with kind of dignity, and saying that, oh, there is something wrong. But see, for instance, what is soft Hindutva is that varna systems should be there, but untouchability should be removed. And who knows, that who said that. That's called soft Hindutva. However, to kind of eradicate, to annihilate the problem, we need to really radically criticize all these things, uh, because these are very exploitative. And the work in Karnataka, the work in in Solapur districts or Kolhapur districts are happening. But as far as I also read, their work is also more of not just to cut the jatas, but at the same time, how the women's will be stopped going in this kind of traps. That is what is as far as my own reading and understanding, because I come from that area and I understand the problem very closely. These days, Murli, Vagya, and all those things and live invention are coming. And this is again with the subclassification and caste and that soft Hindutva, people are going towards that. It has serious problems coming up with another kind of level of problem. But as far as going back to your theorization and conceptualization, this is what I feel. Thank you. But yeah, you bringing this issue at least global platform, that's very important. Thank you.
Well, I fully disagree with whatever you said, honestly speaking, because this soft Hindutva thing, I don't really know how you associate it with this particular intervention primarily. But if you do feel so, I suggest you write something and we will keep on writing as well. And we can, sort of like take it to culmination through more of a scholarly discourse rather than discussing this, because in such manner we won't be able to resolve what you are trying to say, and it's very difficult even to comprehensively understand where you are coming from in terms of these arguments, honestly speaking.
No, I
Probably there could be interpretive sort of like a struggle
yeah,
there. Okay, so thanks
I can
Nitin for
understand.
bringing this up.
There's a multifold issue. I can understand the religious point of view, health issues, and maybe we had different perspective to handle this scenario, like this situation, like Jata issue and all. So, and there's some religious feeling also, and respecting everyone's ideology or thought process. But yeah, we're just trying to have a discussion on it, not blaming anybody. So yeah, thanks Nitin for your question, and
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
thank you very much. Govind, definitely, I think, yeah, we can come up with that aspect, which you just mentioned it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Another question I can see from Mr. Zain Gavande in chat. He's saying, which caste practices this? Like any specific caste or any majority under this caste? Like in those people who follow this tradition? Is that, I think that is what he's trying to understand.
Well, the current tradition, like this matting of hair, is regardless of caste currently. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the
Mhm.
dedication during the Devdasi was predominantly from the historically untouchable and other marginalized caste. Okay. So
Yep.
currently, this matting of hair can take place with any women. I mean, uh, we have women like from coming from different castes actually. So there
Yep.
is no particular caste that can be attributed, to
Okay.
this.
Sure.
And the
I hope that
mention
helps.
of dignity, the disorder to dignity part in the title is predominantly about giving respect to the beliefs that women develop, or the association women develop with the jata for the long term, because there is a jata cutting trauma that exists. Okay, this is predominantly associated with the intervention that we, perform.
Yep.
It's not
So
like dignifying Devdasi or dignifying keeping jata or all
no,
that.
it's I
Actually,
think it's
it
believe
is
like we are
about
respect.
what kind
Yeah.
of outlook that needs to be maintained, and how we approach it with what sort of values. Okay, that's what,
Yeah.
like, we
They're just
want to.
prioritizing the work, I believe, like prioritizing
Yeah,
its
yeah,
data
because
removal rather than removing their cultural, like like we are not round to resolve whole issues, but like at this moment maybe are focusing more on the Jata point rather than thinking about their religious beliefs and faith, like time being keeping that thing aside, where we guys are more focusing on the Jata removal
right,
process or
right, right. The
helping
cultural
them on
sensitivity. Yeah,
health-wise,
cultural
cultural
sensitivity is a
sense
very
of it. So
essential component. Yeah.
yes, I'm totally agree with you. Like you are,
Yeah, so
this issue is like a
disorder
multi.
disorder in sort of like non-culturally sensitive way, we just cut it off, like, without even allowing the woman to, express herself to fullest.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the
Keeping
disorder
it.
part, that's the dirt part I was highlighting. And when I say dignity, we are untangling it with due respect
Yeah,
to whatever spiritual beliefs they have. Simple as that.
yeah, yeah. Keeping their yeah, whatever they believe, respecting that, but helping them from that Jata issue or the health related issue what they have with that hair issues. Yeah, I can understand that totally. So thank you again, sir, Daske sir, for answering the question. Again, one I can see one hand raised from Mr. Vivek. Sir, please unmute yourself and ask the question. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Govind, for coming over to Anna Vihara. I know I'm having a questions about maybe in that similar line, may not be, but I'll put it in a different way, try to put it, the decoding the word itself, Devadasi system, the dasis of the devas, like the slaves. So I think, understanding all those aspects as well, it's just like demeaning the whole culture of the human society. Okay, that one point. And the second point is also disorder itself is a condition where it's a medical condition. It may be the woman may be having a mental phenomena, mental weaknesses. So having that point, giving the dignifying ways, I think it should just undermines the equality that our system brings. Giving that human the equal opportunities. I think. And also the removal movement itself, why there's a removal movement, it's maybe because this is the disorder should be taken out and given the norms what the human society believes in. So in your understanding, you as an author, do you believe the jata system is the correct ways, that women should continue, in a as a meaning to protect the dignity of a human, because that is the tradition they believed in, or this is the tradition they lived in? That's my question.
No one is sort of like pursuing that line, sir. Honestly speaking, we are just a dignified way of removing jata. That's what we have been insisting on. Honestly speaking, it's not really a good thing to keep. Honestly speaking, as a hairstyle, we do promote like matted hair, as a hairstyle. Okay, but this particular thing is a condition. It's a health condition, but there is no action been taken actually. Earlier until 90s, WHO did attend some of the lice control programs where they used to have like a school-based approach, soap distribution, shampoo distribution. Those kinds of interventions existed in Africa as well as southern parts of Asia. But then gradually it gone out of it actually. The hygiene became like self-responsibility throughout the public health discourses, and that is how the whole thing got disappeared. And as far as the belief system goes, culturally, these women do believe that it's a divine body. It should not be treated through doctor, because if doctor can cure the goddess, then who's more powerful, doctor or goddess? It's that kind of a superstitious belief that exists among societies. So most of these women do not go to doctors, honestly speaking. So medical intervention has been problematic because of that part. Even the barbers have problem. In fact, like Mukta, ma'am of Anis, actually shared of one of the cases where the woman affected with matted hair belonged to a barber's family. Actually, her son had a saloon, but still she didn't untangle it and kept it for years. Actually, eventually Anis removed those matted hair. So it's not about keeping. Actually, we don't really want it to, in the first place, happen like right in which we want the very close health monitoring at the school level itself, where we can detect it, the early formation of matted hair, and we can intervene right in the early stages. But there is not much research on the medical front as well. I mean, the doctors also tend to like just cut it off. Okay, so we are just trying to insist on having some sort of like a culturally sensitive approach, respecting the woman and her sort of like mental composition alongside the jata. Actually, we are not really preserving any of these uh, negative or wrong traditions that have clear health and human rights violation.
So just going back to the discussion, and like finding the originality where the jata started, and you also stated in your sentence that it may be having not what the current system is, what the jatas were practicing, maybe something else. What else could be, when the whole Indian systems, the fight of Dr. Ambedkar, or there are many reformers you named, like Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, who fought, to remove this oppression from the society, so what else could be there in the originality, and how do we, understanding the jattas can be a dignified way when it is a disorder itself, right? So I think the removal movement itself is a good ways, and giving that the touch should be in a way where, your conclusion should be, this doesn't have any cultural aspect to it, it is more like a forced upon, the beliefs by the oppressors.
The thing is that it coexists, right? It is so culturally entangled kind of a medical problem. So we can't really dissociate cultural part from the medical part here. That is why the intervention has to consider the cultural aspect as well. And that is what we have been trying to do.
Okay. And also, like, in your discussion, I think the fundamentals of our constitution, what Dr. Ambedkar has inserted, and many reformers, who have come across before us, also the scientific demeanor of, the practices. So did you touch upon that issues, that certain things doesn't have any scientific basis why one should even keep, in the name of beliefs, the jata should, the only, the woman should be sacrificing for that.
Could you please come again, sir, the question? I didn't get the question.
The question is, like, because these are the predominantly the woman dominated field, right? The jatas,
Right.
and they have made a victim to it.
Right.
In the name of either many of these things, because they are weak, they are looked, the down, like, shudras, and they're powerless, So I think, our system, the Baba Sahib has given, in the constitution, from, when you are talking about the Buddhas to Kabiras to all of these people have come across and fought to remove all these beliefs, I'm just, having difficulty to digest, to find the originality and what else can you find, than you understand, than your research is, because just doesn't seems to be shelter to it, for the topic.
Right, right. I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. The thing is that, sir, we are researchers basically. So we do come across some questions and we do want to follow those lines. Even if there is no meaning, there is no harm in, going for that. I think it is pretty much in line with the scientific spirit that you are trying to highlight. So I do know, like, probably the sweeping sort of like reformist educated ideas about, being rational, putting it as medical phenomena and all that. It has been there, right? I mean, I also, like, most of the time I was involved as a student volunteer, we did believe that actually. Now after research, we tend to, like, understood, like, there are some nuances that needs some more understanding, some more detailed analysis and understanding of the, cultural history of certain traditions. So there is no harm in pursuing that line of inquiry to understand, like, how it was and what it was in the first place actually. Even the Devdasi, we don't really buy that name actually, Devdasi. That's pretty oppressive sort of name there actually. So the pre-existing cultural practices that were, like, changed altogether with the casteism and the dominant, theorization from these normative forces in the caste system. So there's no harm in understanding to that extent actually, and going to the indigeneity.
Okay, yeah, thank you for explanation, and hope we have learned a lot about it, and there may be many questions maybe still unanswered in the context of our discussion, but definitely this is something very important to know about it. Thank you. Manish, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek sir. Thank you, Daske sir, for answering the question. I can see in chat, Mr. Manish Veshram asking, Dr. Ambedkar argues oppression of women thrives casteism in India. I see influencing to have jata is one form of oppression. Manish, is it a question or just an observation? Sorry, do you want to take this as a question? Manish Veshram. Okay,
It looks
just a
like a
comment.
comment. Yeah, it's a
Just a
comment. Yeah.
comment. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
that one
And
even
yeah, I
I
do agree
understood,
with
but
this
just want
particular
to make.
comment. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I see influencing to have
The
jata.
when we say
Yeah,
caste gender intersectionality,
yeah,
I like when I showed that diagram where the tonsure of head of our caste women, widowed women existed, and how the matted hair are being called as a dirt.
yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was
Yes,
trying
sir.
to highlight there actually. So yeah, the caste gender intersectionality is there, and that is also one of the primary reasons why the public health system is not really geared up to, intervene to that level, honestly speaking, because there's
Yeah,
not much research in the medical science globally as well about this particular disorder. So that's another gendered kind of, health research related aspect that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yep. Yep. Any other question? I don't see any raised hands. So meanwhile, I would like to ask one question. So when you are doing that type of Jata removal process, just for my understanding, you guys take the I try to understand how the person behave after that, like how the post, like how they feel it, like how they feeling before that keeping Jata and after removing Jata, how type of changes the person have, the woman have, and are you documenting that? And secondly, next question is like,
Yes,
are they helping
yes,
for the next ladies or women to,
yes, yes, yes.
you know,
Most of the
work in that
women
same
who
direction?
Absolutely, absolutely. They become like volunteer of Jata removal movement
Volunteer.
again, actually.
Yes.
And some of these women do join us when we are untangling, other women's hair, because it's sort of a role modeling that takes place.
Yes.
And these women also are like a community-based volunteers who refer another women who have Jata in the community. So we do develop sort of like a community-based
Yes.
sort of
It's
like a intervention and system. So these women become like a very core part.
yeah,
And
because
as
they
far as
need
their
help.
individual journey is concerned, they
Yeah.
do feel happiness and they are able to do several of the things. Like I can explain one example actually, which I documented and I've spoken with the person regularly.
Yeah.
She was not able to, put the gajra in her head because of the jata, and
Yeah.
she was not able to attend marriage and all that. And her son was going to English medium school, and then the son started questioning the mother, like, why your hair are different than other women?
Hmm.
And that's when she got triggered, like, what is happening and all that. And at the same time, she came across one of our volunteer, and then she got referred to us. Then we did photo shoot, like, how she was feeling, how the face was stressed. And then
Yeah.
we did pictures afterwards, like after the removal, periodically, each time,
Yeah.
like after 2 3 years, we took pictures and we realized that how she was happy. And she does express that, even in front of media, she used to speak very boldly about like how her experience was like sort of like a reformist, and that brought happiness in her life actually. So yeah, I mean, these women get associated with our larger mission. Yes,
Right, yeah, because they're volunteer or they become a role model to other person. So that will be more
exactly.
helpful to and documenting those or sharing those information. I think encourage more and more women to follow that process or to take the remedy. So yeah, that makes sense, and yeah, really thankful to answering the question. I don't see any further questions, so I
There
think
is
and
there is a question by Jane
oh,
Gawande.
sorry
Is
again.
it prevalent in Mahar community too? Yeah, some sort of prevalence is there. Yes, but the larger prevalence is among Matang community actually. Matang, partly Ramoshi community, then Holar community, the Sangar community. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that is a health issue, so it can happen any community, I believe, any like the Jetta
Yeah, the
issues. It's not cultural.
cultural practice exists with largely the marginalized groups actually.
Yes,
The
yeah,
issue could take place to anyone, honestly speaking. Yes.
yeah, and because of the religious angle attachment,
Yes,
they are
caste
very
angle
heavy
and the religious based angle, both
attachment.
angles make it
Yeah,
very challenging for the women
complications.
from marginalized castes.
That's
Yeah.
an education.
Yeah, and the
But they're
education
not
lack of
they're not
nutrition,
educated.
lack of health resources, lack of hygiene resources, lack of
Yeah.
livelihood. Yeah, and the whole social position thing is still there. I mean, now it is
Yes.
converted into the economic disorder. I mean, as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that's what I'm saying. It's a multifold issue. Like
Right, right,
you
right,
can't solve all those issues in one shot. So you have to
right.
prioritize your work, which direction you're going. So yeah, thank you again. And I don't see further questions, and it's almost time to come to end to our session. So I don't see any other questions. So I think let me conclude the session today. So thank you, Dr. Govind Daske, for giving your time and coming on the Vihara. So this is it is time to conclude the online Buddha Vihara. I want to thank you Bante Sariputta Thero for blessing us with his Dhamma talk. Thank you Kid Motivational Story by Mehit Wamankar and Krantitai for conducting the Kid Story. Many thanks to guest speaker Dr. Govind Daske for his topic. And thank you all participants who joined today. And Plan to join next week too, again on online Vihara at the same time. With this, I will conclude today's session. Thank you. Have a great week ahead. And Namo Buddhaya. Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Jai Bhim.
Thank you. Jai Bhim.